Welcome to the skills tier list. I'm Quirky Turtle, and this is also more so my opinion, but I'm sure there's some objective truth in it. So this is skills tier list, and I'm going to be breaking down, obviously, what skills are good and what skills are bad or not so great, right? But I'm also going to be breaking down their skill upgrades per skill. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So starting the skill upgrades off with the general skill upgrades, let's just quickly, go over what there is. So there's an additional charge upgrade, there's a damage upgrade, there's a heal on kill upgrade, there's a refresh reduction upgrade, and there's a crit upgrade, right? So we're going to start with the additional charge upgrade. The additional charge upgrade is A tier. It doesn't really benefit the skill in any way, except now you have an additional charge. So you can stack them up higher, right? So if you're trying to, get more charges so you can kill bosses faster, or you can refresh all at once to have more charges to like burn throughout a room, right? It's pretty strong in that regard, but overall, it's not the best, right? That's why I'm saying it A tier, because it's strong but not crazy by any means. Now, the damage upgrade is absolutely ridiculous on most of the skills. It gives you, like, generally speaking, 50% or more increase in base damage, which is ridiculous. That is insanity. So that's why I'm putting it in S tier. It is super, super strong. Now, the heal, I feel, is very underwhelming. I feel like healing 1 health for every single time you kill an enemy with this specific skill that you put this upgrade on is pretty weak. Now, obviously, healing is healing, right? But it's not a lot. And it's very circumstantial, right? Because the only way you're going to get healing off of um, killing an enemy with a skill is if you have a lot of skill damage already, right? Otherwise, there's no real reason to take this because you're never going to get a kill with a skill if you don't have a lot of skill damage, right? So that's why I'm throwing it in D tier. This isn't to say don't use it. If you think it's good, keep using it by all means. I'm just saying, in my personal opinion, it is not the best general skill upgrade. I wouldn't personally take it. I think I've taken it once, and it did not work out well at all. Alright, so the refresh upgrade is actually pretty good. I'm going to throw it in B tier because for some skills, reducing its refresh by like 5 is ridiculous. Like this skill upgrade, obviously it's a generic skill upgrade, so it varies based off of the skill, but usually it's like reduce the refresh by 2, right, for that skill. But on some skills, it's reduce it by 5, which is a lot, and that is a big percentage. So I feel like this skill upgrade has very specific use cases. Like if you're running a skill like Ballista or Warrior Wisps or something that has really high refresh, then reducing that refresh by like 5 or even like 4, like it's a lot, right? Just by reducing it, you now are able to use that skill so much more often. So that's why I'm throwing in B tier, because it's not quite as good as an additional charge, but it is still really strong. And then this crit upgrade is really, really good. Some skills can crit by default, but some can't, right? The skills that can't crit by default, this will allow them to crit. So it's kind of strong. And usually it's also like 15 to 20% crit chance on that skill, which is a very high percentage by default. Or not by default, but like allowing a skill to crit and then giving it like 15 to 20% crit chance is a lot. Um, Skills are generally really strong and deal a lot of damage, so being able to crit with it, which gives you another 1.5x multiplier on top by default, like that's the default crit multiplier, is really, really strong. Now, obviously, this is one of the better skill upgrades. If you find it, but you're not quite sure if it's worthy or not, this is definitely one that I would choose just to take because it's good enough to take to get closer to your ultimate upgrade sooner. This is the general skill upgrades tier list here. Yeah, it's pretty simple, right? Damage, crits, upgrades, those are at the top. Then it's additional skill charge. Then it's the refreshed skill upgrade. And then last but not least is the healing skill upgrade. So starting with Arcane Bolts, right? Arcane Bolts is a solid S tier skill. It has a lot of charges, with 3 being its base amount of charges, and then its refresh is also really low, which is also one of the lowest, which is 10 refresh. So you can refresh the skill quite fast, and there's a lot of charges, so there's a lot of synergy between refreshing relics, and then also, since you're going to be able to use it a lot, you can, utilize some of the relics like Supreme Ambition, and things where you need to get kills with skills or utilize skills to get buffs, right? Those relics work great with Arcane Bolts. Arcane Bolts is just a great overall starting skill. It has good damage. It does 8 damage across the board, whether you tap it, charge it, or perfect it. However, if you tap it, you get 3 bolts. If you charge it, you get 4 bolts. And if you perfect it, you get 5 bolts. So that's the increase in damage there when you tap, charge, and perfect. It's just you get an extra bolt that deals an extra 8 skill damage, right, to that charge, which is quite nice. Overall, I would say it is S tier. It is just a great skill overall. Now let's jump into their skill upgrades. So the skill upgrades for Arcane Bolts are pretty straightforward here. With Arcane Bolts upgrade 1, your bolts become ghosts. Whenever you defeat an enemy with a ghost bolt, another is summoned to seek and damage additional enemies. So this skill upgrade is S tier. It is absolutely insane how strong this is, because if you get a kill with these ghost bolts, it'll go and seek another enemy, right? So if you have enough skill damage, it can just loop, and like you can kill an enemy, it'll summon a ghost bolt, and that will kill an enemy, and then that'll summon a ghost bolt to go seek out other enemies, right? Like that is really, really strong. It's obviously way stronger in like a super high skill damage build, but I honestly think this is one of the best skill upgrades for Arcane Bolts, and honestly, overall, it is just a really, really solid upgrade. We're going to be moving on to Arcane Bolts Upgrade 2, though, which is your bolts are imbued with a random element of burn, freeze, poison, or lightning. Now, this one can be good. I think it's very situational, which is why I'm going to throw it in B tier for now, because unless you have a build where you can utilize all of these different elements, it's kind of hard to make a build around it, right? Since you're just applying a whole bunch of different elements with your skill charges, right? Or skill casts. It's just not great. So I'm just going to leave it in B tier. I think it's just, mediocre. I can't really say much else. It doesn't give you any sort of direction, really. You're kind of gambling on which element it's going to apply, which isn't great unless, you're running an avatar build where you just have an abundance of relics that deal with an abundance of elements, right? Which is burn, freeze, poison, lightning. If you have a build where you can utilize all of them, by all means, this is a great upgrade. But other than that, I think it's pretty mid. Moving on to the Arcane Bolts Upgrade 3, your bolts release an expanding circle. Honestly, this one's pretty bad too. I'm going to throw it in C because it's not quite terrible. Like, I wouldn't say don't pick it up, because it is very interesting, and it's a kind of cool upgrade. It's just not super effective. That's the only issue. It doesn't really give your bolts any extra damage or any extra emphasis, right? Like it doesn't do much for you other than creates like a cyclone around you, sort of. Like I don't know how to explain it better. You'll just have to try it out, really. But personally, I don't think it's that great. It can be cool, but it's not good, in my opinion. And then the ultimate upgrade is also insane for Arcane Bolts. Arcane Bolts refreshes quicker by 1 hit every 1 second. So, in layman's terms, Arcane Bolts will refresh passively, 1 refresh every 1 second. So every second you are refreshing Arcane Bolts by 1 charge. Or not 1 charge, but by 1 refresh, which is ridiculous. It is just passive refresh of skills, which is one of the most broken things I've seen in this game by a long shot. So once again, if you are trying to do an Arcane Bolts run, you should definitely be trying to get that ultimate upgrade as soon as possible. And that's not to say skip over upgrades that will be more beneficial. Like, let's say you don't get any of these specific skill upgrades, right? That doesn't mean just go and take like a weaker skill upgrade, like the general healing skill upgrade. That doesn't mean just take that because it's an upgrade, right? It means you should try to choose things that are still strong for your build, but are good enough to take so that you can get the ultimate upgrade sooner. And the sooner you get it, the more chance you have of increasing your power spike. So, yeah, I honestly do think that is where it should be. So, moving on from Arcane Bolts, there is Arcane Orb and also Quasar Orbs, right? Quasar Orbs is probably an A tier skill. Well, Arcane Orb is D tier. The reason why I'm putting these two together is because they kind of share the same slots, as in they are a staff or a Nexal staff exclusive skill. You have to be using the Nexal staff to be able to use this skill or to get this skill, I guess, because technically you could drop it to a friend in the Nexus and then they could have it not on staff. But generally speaking, it's going to be a staff exclusive skill, right? And they also share the same skill upgrades, so we'll go over that in a second. But they have 2 charges and a refresh of 10 by default. Arcane Orb shoots 1 orb out that does a little bit of damage. I don't know the exact damage numbers off the top of my head, but it's really weak compared to Quasar Orbs that shoots 3 orbs that deal AoE damage in a pretty big AoE. So, once again, Quasar Orbs A tier and Arcane Orb D tier. Going into the skill upgrades for Arcane Orb and Quasar Orbs, right? They're the same upgrades, just slightly, changed because it's different names, right? But the tier 1 upgrade for both of them, which is Arcane Orb refreshes quicker by 1 hit every 1 second, and Quasar Orbs refreshes quicker by 1 hit every 1 second, right? It's really strong. It's the same. That's not the one I want. Where is it? It is the same as the Arcane Bolts ultimate upgrade, just as a tier 1 upgrade. So you can get it faster, and it's very, very strong once again. I would say this is probably the strongest upgrade on the Arcane Orb or Quasar Orbs upgrades. The tier 1 is just super, super strong. That's why it's an S tier. It is the best skill upgrade for these skills. Moving on to upgrade number 2. Arcane Orb is a cone of damage, and Quasar Orb deals 3 cones of damage. These are really bad. Really, really bad. I highly dislike this. It reduces the range by like an infinite amount, basically. And it's just really, really bad. I've used it like once, and it feels bad. It doesn't like it reduces your range, which is the big thing. It basically makes your Arcane Orb or Quasar Orbs into an Ember Fire like charge. Like it's a cone, right? But it's also really short range, which is the huge downside of it. And there's no damage like increase at all. It's just now it's a cone of damage, which is terrible. So that's why I'm throwing in D tier. I personally would not pick up this upgrade, even if it's like the only specific skill upgrade that I get in a skill selector and I'm running one of these 2 skills. I would not pick it up. It is just not worth it. I'd rather just skip it, honestly. Now, moving on to the Arcane Orb upgrade 3 and the Quasar Orbs upgrade 3. Whenever Arcane Orb refreshes, 3 Seeking Orbs are summoned. Or whenever Quasar Orbs refreshes, 3 Seeking Orbs are summoned, right? It's actually really good. It's really strong in a refresh and skill damage build, right? Because if you're refreshing these skills a lot, then you're going to be summoning a lot of Seeking Orbs. And those Seeking Orbs deal skill damage, right? So once again, if you have high skill damage, amazing, amazing upgrade. If you have a lot of refresh, great upgrade, because it's just extra damage, right? If you have both, absolutely insane pick, right? And if you're not doing a refresh or a skill damage scaling build, it's not really that great. It is good enough that you can take it and it's still valid and still works quite well, but it's not going to do that much for you. Therefore, I'm throwing it in B tier because it's a good solid skill, just not insane by any means. The ultimate upgrade for Arcane Orb and Quasar Orbs is quite good, but also not like as strong as I think refreshing faster is. However, there is another layer there. So I'm actually going to move down upgrade 1 and throw the ultimates to the top. Because the ultimates make it so you don't really have to refresh the skill. You can just hold the skill out and charge it, right? And then it'll keep shooting out more orbs, right? And you can like do this thing where you charge it, roll cancel it, charge it, roll cancel it, and like do that back and forth, and you'll send out a lot more orbs, or seeking orbs, that is. And they do skill damage. So once again, if you have a skill damage build, it's amazing. And since it's the ultimate, you don't actually, have to reroll for it or anything. It's just once you get 2 other skill upgrades, you get it. And it's very strong. So if you are running a Arcane Orb or Quasar Orbs skill and you're going a skill build, I would definitely say try to get the ultimate upgrade almost as soon as possible because it's super, super strong. But once again, with that being said, that doesn't mean take bad upgrades, bad skill upgrades to get it. It just means take ones that are good enough so that you can get the ultimate upgrade sooner. Moving on to Arlan's Lucky Dice. Arlan's Lucky Dice has gone through a lot recently. However, I still think it is an A tier. It is still a really, really strong skill. It has 1 charge and a refresh of 12. However, when you roll the dice, there's 6 different effects. Rolling a 1 buffs you. Rolling a 2 summons a mini Cyclone, or I guess a gravity well kind of thing, where it just pulls enemies in to the middle and like kind of stuns them for a little bit, which is kind of nice. Rolling a 3 refreshes a skill charge on everybody that's in the party, that is. Rolling a 4 heals you for 10% of your max health. Rolling a 5 summons a lightning storm. And then rolling a 6 summons meteors. And meteors is insane. They have 100 base damage and it scales with skill damage, which makes it the highest damage skill in the game, which is so crazy. Onto Arlan's Lucky Dice skill upgrades. The Arlan's Lucky Dice upgrade 1 is rolling a 1 also conjures food, and rolling a 2 also conjures a gem. Max 1 gem and food per room. It's still pretty good. I'm going to throw it in B tier because it's still good. Rolling a 1 gives you food, which is healing, right? And if you can cook food, which means you have some sort of fire damage or tick damage from fire, right? Then you can cook it, and then it gives you more healing. Rolling a 2 conjures a gem, right? A gem is quite strong. Though it is a small gem, it is still like 5% move speed, 5% skill damage, 2% crits, 1 damage. There's so many good things that come out of it, and I think it's just really solid. Being able to get a little bit more stats every room is quite nice. So that's why I'm leaving it in B tier, because it's about like the mid ground, I would say. Arlan's Lucky Dice upgrade 2. Rolling a 3 also summons a Wisp, max of 2. Rolling a 4 also summons a Ballista, max of 1. I find this quite underwhelming, I'm going to be honest. The fact that you can only have 2 Wisps from this skill and 1 Ballista is quite underwhelming. Now, obviously, it was really, really strong back in the day when the upgrades just came out, and you could have, like, basically infinite. There wasn't really a cap. But now it's in a more balanced place, and it is still good, don't get me wrong. It's just, it's not that great of a skill upgrade. I would much rather have, like, a general upgrade of just bonus damage, or refresh, or even crit. Like, it's a good upgrade. I would say take it if you need something to take the pressure off of you, because it is just more Wisps and or a Ballista that can take aggro, right? So it's more of a tech upgrade, as in you can utilize it to give you time or maybe give you space, because the enemies will attack said Wisp or said Ballista before it attacks you, right? It's just a way of getting the aggro off of you. And honestly, it's still a gamble, right? 'Cause you still gotta roll a 3 or a 4. It's not guaranteed. Moving on to Arlan's Lucky Dice upgrade 3. The chance of rolling a 5 or 6 are doubled. Now, this one is an A tier upgrade, for sure. The chance of rolling a 5 or 6 is doubled, right? Now, that increases the chances of rolling a 5 and 6, but also decreases the odds of rolling a 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, if you're going to take this upgrade, you have to not be looking for any of the other rolls, right? You have to be solely focusing on the damage side of Arlan's Lucky Dice, which is quite high damage if you do scale your skill damage. And even if you don't, it is still really good damage. I honestly, personally, would take Arlan's Lucky Dice Upgrade 3 over any of the other ones on like any given day. It's just better, right? More damage is just better. So that's why it's an A tier, honestly. It's just solid. Ellen, the ultimate upgrade. Whenever you cast a perfect Arlan's Lucky Dice, roll a second dice. This is still probably A tier, to be honest. It's stronger than Arlan's Lucky Dice Upgrade 1 and 2, but it's not quite as strong as Upgrade 3 because 3 is just way more damage. And the ultimate upgrade, you do just get as soon as you get 2 upgrades. But since you have to perfect charge Arlan's Lucky Dice, it's kind of like I might actually move it down to B tier because as good as it is, you still have to perfect it. And it's not that hard to perfect Arlan's Lucky Dice, right? But it's annoying because you could just tap it and get your one dice roll, right? Without any real restriction, because by perfecting Arlan's Lucky Dice, it doesn't increase the damage or the effects of any of the outcomes of the dice roll. Having to perfect it's kind of more of a gamble than it is anything else. But then again, it is a pretty solid upgrade. Ballista is a very interesting skill here. Ballista has 2 charges and its refresh is 20. Now, a lot of people that I've talked to in the Ember Knights community have utilized this for a couple of reasons. One, it takes aggro off of you, and 2, it's actually decent damage. However, in my personal opinion, it's very mid. It is extremely mid. Therefore, it's going to go in B tier, and it's kind of slightly surprising because a lot of people think this is one of the best skills in the game. Now, that was also a while ago. However, there's still some really good skill upgrades, so let's talk about those. So, Ballista's skill upgrades are pretty straightforward here. Ballista upgrade 1 here is your Ballista is imbued with a random element of burn, freeze, poison, or lightning. Like the Arcane Bolts skill upgrade, it's very mid because it doesn't really set you in a direction or a build that you can go. It's more just saying, I'm going to apply a bunch of different elements and maybe it will, help you out. Maybe it won't, right? It doesn't give you a clear direction. But then again, if you have a build that can accommodate all these different elements, then it's pretty good. So I'm going to throw in B tier because sometimes having, a Ballista be able to freeze is quite good because it does, stop the enemies in their tracks for a certain amount of time, which is super cool. And I feel like Ballista Upgrade 1 is fairly strong in that regard. Like it kind of shakes up the combat a little bit and is a very mediocre upgrade in my opinion. Like it could be so much stronger. So with that, we're going to move on to upgrade 2. Your Ballista shoots a spread of 3 arrows. S tier. Instantly S tier. This is ridiculous, I'm not going to lie. I know that it's not 3x damage because if you read the patch notes, they reduced the additional damage or the damage on all the arrows. So it's only like 66% of the original damage of the single arrow if it was only 1 arrow. But it's still, you're getting like 1.5x damage overall, which is very, very strong. So that's why it's an S tier. It's also just an additional hit, right? So it's another hit that could crit or deals damage, right? Like it's good. It's really strong. Ballista Upgrade 3 pairs really well with Upgrade 2 as well. Whenever an enemy is damaged by a Ballista, you heal for 2 HP. That is really strong. If you want to like never die, literally just choose Ballista Upgrade 2 and Ballista Upgrade 3, and then get some form of refresh to be able to place down as many ballistas as you can. And then you kind of just chill because you'll heal 2 health per arrow that the ballista hits, which is, if you have the upgrade 2, that's 3 arrows times 2. That's 6 health every single time a single ballista attacks, which is a lot. So it's definitely an A tier. And once again, we're just going to recap the last 3 tiers. So tier 2 is S tier, tier 3 is A tier, tier 1 is B tier, right? And then the ultimate is really strong as well. I think it's going to be A tier, just slightly below upgrade 3. Because what the ultimate upgrade for Ballista does is ballistas can now be picked up. Whenever it's picked up, it refreshes. So basically, if you don't let the ballistas die, because they have an internal lifetime that slowly takes down once you place it, and it can also get hit, and then its lifespan, takes down more. But it's so strong. It just gives you so much refresh because you can place a ballista, right? Let it attack a couple times. If it's not even taking damage, right, you can just go pick it up, move it, right? Like, it's super strong. As long as you are actively aware that your ballistas are attacking and are benefiting you, and then you want to, make sure they don't disappear or die, right? As long as you keep them alive and continue cycling them, it is an amazing build, and this is probably one of the best upgrades overall. Like, it is such a cool upgrade, and to me, when I use this ultimate upgrade with the tier 2 and tier 3 upgrade, it makes me feel like an engineer. You're just going around placing some turrets, and then you're going back, picking them up, moving them. It's a super fun build. Yeah, overall, ultimate upgrade, A tier as well. Really, really strong skill as a whole. It's just also pretty mid because it's just it's the high refresh really kills the skill in my opinion. However, getting the ultimate completely contradicts that and fixes it. So maybe I'll even change where it is on the tier list. No, I don't think I'm going to change where Ballista is on the tier list. I think it's perfect at B. I think it's the perfect mid build. So moving on to Blast Bomb. Blast Bomb is real strong as well. I'm going to throw it just behind Arlan's Lucky Dice because it's really strong, as in it has one skill charge of 12 refresh, which sure, 12 is kind of high, but it also has one of the highest base damages in the game, with it being 50, 60, and 70. So if you tap it, the base damage is 50. If you charge it, it's 60, and if you perfect it, it is 70 base damage, which is really, really high. So it scales with skill damage extremely well. So let's talk about the skill upgrades for Blast Bomb. The skill upgrades for Blast Bomb are okay. Starting with upgrade 1, enemies hit by your Blast Bomb are rooted for 2 seconds. This, in my opinion, is extremely underwhelming. Extremely underwhelming. I don't personally know any time where I would want enemies to be rooted. And it's only for 2 seconds. Now, I understand if it was any longer than 2 seconds, it would kind of be really strong, right? But why would I want enemies to be rooted? Obviously, then they can't move, right? Like, there is some obvious aspects to it, but personally, I've not found a great use for this upgrade yet. I've only tried it a couple times, but I've, been trying to theorize how I could use it, right? But I've never came up with a solid way to use it and actually gain a lot of value from it. It's just underwhelming in my opinion. From there, let's just move on to upgrade 2. Your bombs pull enemies towards them before exploding. This one's also underwhelming. It delays the explosion of your Blast Bomb. For reference, Blast Bomb will explode on impact if you directly hit an enemy. If you don't, then it'll sit on the ground for roughly 3 seconds, I would say, and then explode. Or until something interacts with it, right? But does it really need to pull enemies towards them before exploding? And then it forces the 3-second cooldown, I'm pretty sure. Or not cooldown, but the 3-second explode timer. I don't like that. It kind of hinders the Blast Bomb, in my opinion. But then again, I can see uses for it. So that's why I'm throwing in C tier, not D tier, like the upgrade 1. It is kind of better, in my opinion. Anyways, moving on to upgrade 3. The best upgrade. Blast Bomb upgrade 3 throws 3 bombs in a row. This is strong. They reduce the damage on the additional bombs, or all bombs deal 66% of the base damage. Once again, you're getting a multiplier of 1.5x the damage that you would normally get with only one bomb. So it's still good. It's still really good. Plus, it's multiple instances of damage, which means overall it is more damage. I would definitely say taking Blast Bomb upgrade 3 is a solid thing to do. I would say it's almost a snap take if you do get offered it. And then the ultimate upgrade for Blast Bomb, bombs explode into 3 smaller cluster bombs, is also really, really strong. Now, it's slightly, I would say it's just under upgrade 3, because the smaller cluster bombs, as good as they become a lot better with upgrade 3, because those 3 bombs turn into 3 small cluster bombs, right? Like, then it's 9 cluster bombs. It's just way better with upgrade 3. So upgrade 3 is slightly better than the ultimate upgrade, in my opinion. But then again, the ultimate upgrade is very strong. So I am going to keep the ultimate upgrade at A tier, keep the Blast Bomb upgrade 3 at S tier, Blast Bomb upgrade 2 in C tier, and Blast Bomb upgrade 1 in D tier. So now we can move on to Chakram. Chakram is another one of those skills that is just really, really strong. It has 1 charge, but its refresh is 12. So it's similar to like Arlan's Lucky Dice, Blast Bomb, and some other skills. The thing that puts it above the rest is it can crit by default. And it bounces off of enemies, right? It bounces around and does from 3 bounces to 5 bounces, whether you tap it, charge it, or perfect it. Overall, though, Chakram is just a solid skill. It has high base damage of 15, which once again does not increase whether you tap it, charge it, or perfect it. The damage does not increase at all. It's just the amount of bounces. So it's very similar to Arcane Bolts in that way. If you just get more interactions with the skill, if you perfect it or charge it, whatever, right? But it's a very cool skill. I'm not gonna lie. And I think the upgrades also make it much better. So let's go talk about the upgrades for Chakram. The upgrades for Chakram are fairly straightforward. Chakram upgrade 1 increases crit chance of Chakram by 10%. Whenever Chakram crits, it freezes. Freeze is one of the best elements in the game. By far, actually. It is the best by far. That's why us speedrunners use freeze builds to speedrun Ember Knights. It's just that good. And then increasing the crit chance of Chakram by 10% is also really good, because it can crit by default. It also segues into a lot of the freeze builds, which a lot of the freeze builds utilize skills, right? Chakram is a perfect skill to utilize in that freeze build. Chakram upgrade 2. Whenever Chakram bounces off the knights, their next weapon attack is a guaranteed crit. I feel like this is pretty underwhelming. I can see where the devs were going with this, but I've yet to actually utilize it, if it makes sense. Like, I'll pick it up occasionally because it is a skill upgrade, but it really doesn't do anything, in my opinion. Unless you're running a crit build, it realistically doesn't do anything. And even if you're running a crit build, it's got to be a weapon crit build. It can't just be like a skill crit build. I don't know. I find it quite hard to utilize, therefore I'm throwing it in C tier. Chakram upgrade 3. Whenever you cast a perfect Chakram, your first hit is a crit. I think it's also A tier along with Chakram upgrade 1, because perfecting Chakram is like not even a question, really. You should always be trying to perfect skills, because you usually just get more damage, or in this case, you get more bounces off Chakram, which is really, really nice. And it pairs well with the tier 1 upgrade, where when you do perfect it, your first hit is a crit, and that crit will then freeze enemies if you have the tier 1 and the tier 3 upgrade, right? It's a great combo. And then you just build into freeze, and you're kind of just on your way. Yeah, I think it's a solid upgrade. If you don't even have the tier 1 upgrade, right, it's still a crit. That's still 1.5x damage on that first bounce. And then the ultimate upgrade for Chakram is absurd. Like, I don't know how it's so good, but it's so good. Chakram hits count towards refreshing skills. If you don't have any refresh, this gives you a lot of refresh, because as long as you perfect Chakram, you'll get 5 bounces, right? And those 5 bounces count as refreshing skills. So whether it's just between you and an enemy, that's fine, or if it's between a group of enemies, that's a lot of bounces, right? You're gonna get 5 bounces, that's 5 refresh, just straight back to the skill and your other skill as well. It's just 5 refresh, right? It's really, really strong, and that's why I thought it was gonna be great in speedrunning as well. I know I'm talking about speedrunning a little bit in the Chakram upgrades, but it really is like good for speedrunning in some scenarios, right? And even just casual play. Being able to refresh skills just, kind of passively with a skill is quite nice. You don't need any extra relics to be able to refresh skills any better. You just choose the ultimate upgrade or get the ultimate upgrade for Chakram. Overall, I would say if you have the chance, try to get Chakram upgrade 1 and Chakram upgrade 3 for Chakram. Otherwise, try to just get like the default or the generic crit upgrade or the generic damage upgrade, both of which are quite strong and I greatly recommend for Chakram, that is. And once again, the sooner you get the ultimate upgrade, the sooner you're going to be able to utilize more Chakrams in your build. Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Ultimate upgrade in S tier, tier 1 and tier 3 in A tier, and then the tier 2 is in C tier. Moving on to Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger is one of those skills where it's good, but like, how good? I think it's better. Actually, it's definitely worse than Quasar Orbs, but I think it's better than Ballista. So, Cloak and Dagger has a refresh of 15 and has 1 charge. But utilizing it with Scythe is also very good. Scythe has some upgrades that are great for it, but I'm not going to go into depth over that at all. Just Cloak and Dagger by itself is once again strong. It makes you invisible, and then you can cast it again, and it does a lot of damage. Also, Cloak and Dagger gives you move speed while you are invisible, so it can get you through rooms faster, or it can get you out of danger faster. Also, by being invisible, you de-aggro all of the enemies, so they can target onto your Wisps, or onto your Ballistas, or onto any other pets you currently have. Cloak and Dagger is just a great skill overall. So let's talk about their upgrades. So Cloak and Dagger's upgrade 1 is your dagger is replaced with 3 daggers that attack in a cone. This is a really good upgrade, as is most upgrades where, you get more daggers or more of the thing, more of the skill, right? It's really strong. You're basically, once again, 1.5xing your damage because there's a damage decrease per dagger when you do pick this up. I believe it's like each dagger does 66% of the base damage. Once again, overall, you're still dealing like 1.5x more damage than you normally do. So, very, very strong. And the cone is pretty tight in a way. So, it allows you to hit a single target a lot if you just like are in their face. I don't know, I've used the tier 1 upgrade a lot when I do use Cloak and Dagger, and it's strong. That is all I really gotta say about the tier 1 upgrade. It is strong. The Cloak and Dagger upgrade 2, whenever entering or exiting invisibility, conjure up to 3 lightning bolts. Kinda underwhelming. I'm gonna put it in B tier here, just for the simple fact that if you're running a lightning build, it's great. It's honestly amazing, because then you get more lightning. And if you're running a lightning build, more lightning is amazing for you. But I see very little benefits when you're not running a lightning build. Therefore, I'm throwing it in like, the situational tier pretty much, which is B tier. Alright, Cloak and Dagger upgrade 3. While invisible, unleash ghosts to seek and damage enemies. Enemies hit by your dagger attacks are haunted. I'm going to throw it in A tier because it's definitely better than the upgrade 2, but it's not as good as upgrade 1. So, while you're invisible, you'll release ghosts that I believe deal 100% of your weapon damage to the enemy that it hits, and then it also applies Haunted. And Haunted is an effect that not that many people utilize, I bet, because there's only like 2 ways to get the Haunted effect, one of which is from a Curse Relic, and the other one is from this skill upgrade right here. I honestly don't like Haunted at all. It's not good, in my opinion. Obviously, it's still more damage, because summoning a ghost is great. I haven't utilized upgrade 3 that much, so I can't really speak all that much to it. Personally, I don't love it. Now, the ultimate upgrade for Cloak and Dagger, whenever entering or exiting invisibility, your next weapon attack is a guaranteed crit and deals increased damage. This has got to be strong. I just don't remember when I used it if it was strong. It's also your next weapon attack is a guaranteed crit, right? Being able to just get a guaranteed crit, basically when you want to, is real strong. And it does more damage. I don't know how much that damage is increased. However, if it's significant, then the upgrade's amazing. I'll definitely have to do a check on that and test that. But I do think the ultimate upgrade is very strong. So that's why I'm throwing in S tier. The next skill is Cyclone, and Cyclone is extremely good at what it is, which is a skill to pull enemies together and basically delay them and just group them. And there's one charge and its refresh is 12, so pretty much on par with most skills. But overall, I think it's the top of A tier because it's ever so slightly better than Dice, because Dice does have some form of a grouping ability, but once again, that's a 1 in 6 chance of hitting. And honestly, Cyclone is just really, really good at what it does. It groups enemies together, does a little bit of damage, it stuns, like, there's a lot of benefits to it. The only downside to it, of why it's not an S tier, is the skill upgrades are really bad, in my opinion. But let's go take a look at that. Starting with the Cyclone upgrade 1 here, in my opinion, it's probably the worst skill upgrade in the entire game, or close to at least, which is you gain 25% move speed for each active Cyclone. Like, when is that even good? The reason why it's not in D tier is because it does actually do something. Like, it is 25% move speed for each active Cyclone, which means if you do have another charge, it could be 50% move speed for that instance where both Cyclones are up. So it's good enough to not be in the worst tier, but I don't think it's good enough to be a snap take or to actually actively try to take it. Honestly, most of the generic upgrades are much better than this, in my opinion. And that leads me to the second upgrade, Cyclone Upgrade 2. Whenever Cyclone dies, lightning is summoned. Once again, it's lightning, right? Now it puts you into a specific route into a build, right? Which is the lightning build. So if you're running a lightning build and you have to pick up Cyclone and you find upgrade number 2, sure, take it, right? More lightning, the better in a lightning build. If you're not running a lightning build, this lightning doesn't really deal that much damage, and it's also a single bolt when the Cyclone dies out. So when the Cyclone stops being a Cyclone or starts to dissipate, right, that's when it'll summon the lightning. Which, sure, it's okay, I guess, but the lightning doesn't deal enough damage, and it's kind of like wasting a skill upgrade. So I'm putting it in B tier because it's very situational. The tier 3 one, I think, is very bad. Cyclone Upgrade 3. Your Cyclones stay with the Knights and no longer pull enemies. The main reason why people use Cyclone is because you can group up a bunch of enemies, right? You can pull a bunch of enemies together. And this Upgrade 3 just completely gets rid of that. The Cyclone stays on you, which means you're not going to group up enemies in front of you, it's just you. And then you can't group up enemies because it doesn't pull in enemies anymore. Maybe I should move it up to D tier and it like just in front of the move speed because it has good synergy with the ultimate, which the ultimate is chunks of earth are thrown dealing damage. To be honest, it's not even that good. Like, it does a decent amount of damage, but you can't control where the chunks go. It just kind of like cycles around it, sort of thing. Like, it'll throw a chunk to the top of it, to the left, to the bottom, to the right. Like, it just does some cycle like that. And the damage on it's not terrible, it's not great. AoE is pretty big. It's not enough, right? Like, it doesn't make it worth getting early. Like, I would much rather have better skill upgrades going to get the ultimate than I would to just get the ultimate and have the ultimate. Also, once again, it does good paired with Cyclone Upgrade 3 because now you can just kind of run around and you'll dish out more damage around you. However, once again, you're not going to be pulling in enemies, which means it's not doing the job that you most likely took it for initially. So unless you've filled that space and or don't need something to pull in enemies, stun them, group them, right, then maybe it's worth it. I don't know. This is just where I stand with it. Overall, I do not think it's a very strong skill. With the skill upgrades itself, the upgrades aren't great. The skill by default is strong, but the upgrades make it weak. So Ember Fire is a very weird skill. It's one of the only skills to have 8 refresh. In fact, it is the only skill that has 8 refresh, and it has 2 charges. I don't really know how I feel about it, so I'm going to throw it in B, right? B tier is like, the middle, right? And it's a great tier to be in, I feel like. There's a lot of possibilities with these skills, but it's not necessarily a snap take or doesn't have a ton of things going for it. The main thing that it has going for it is it can burn, right? Burning allows you to cook food, which is good. You get like double the value out of any of the food you cook, so that's nice. let's take a peek at Ember Fire's upgrades. Ember Fire's upgrades aren't too surprising, and the ultimate was very underwhelming. So let's get into it. Ember Fire Upgrade 1. Increase the range by 50%. It's not bad. It's really not bad. It's just not good. That's the difference. It's not bad, not good. It does something. It's just not great overall. Ember Fire Upgrade 2. Burst an additional cone of mystical flame behind the knight. I honestly don't really see a world where this is good. I really don't. Even if you have the tier 1 and the tier 2 together, I still don't see a world where it's good. And then Ember Fire Upgrade 3 is probably the best one. Shoots 3 fireballs in a spread shot. So it shoots one like in front of you, one at a 45-degree angle to your left, and one at a 45-degree angle to your right. It's actually quite good. It's all the range, the fireballs have infinite range, but I know I've been saying but a lot, but there's a lot of downsides to these things. For example, you shoot out these fireballs, right? They go infinite range until they hit a wall, right? The enemies that they hit will, cause burn or get applied with burn, and then you kind of just don't deal that much damage to them. And the damage doesn't scale that well, I don't think. I could be wrong. I haven't used these upgrades that much, but from what I've tested and what I've seen, they're really not that good. The ultimate is very underwhelming. I'm going to throw it in B tier, just for the simple fact that what it is, it's okay, but it should be stronger. It says, when you burn an enemy with Ember Fire, your burn effects deal 10 increased damage. I thought this was like every single time you burn an enemy, the burn damage per tick will deal 10 more, right? It'll just go up by 10. So each time you hit them, it'll be like 10 burn a tick, then 20 burn a tick, then 30 burn a tick, right? That's how I thought it was, but that's wrong. It's when you burn an enemy with Ember Fire, your burn effects deal 10 increased damage. So by default, burn damage is like 2 damage a tick, I'm pretty sure. So when you hit them with Ember Fire, it goes to 12 damage a tick. And if you hit them again with Ember Fire, it's still 12 damage a tick. It doesn't increase it. It increases it once per enemy. And that's not good. That's really not good. And it's only to that enemy that you hit with Ember Fire, which is another thing. You can't just have a bunch of enemies burning and then hit an enemy with Ember Fire and all your burn ticks now deal 10 increased damage. That's not how it works. It's very, very mediocre. It's the mid of the mid, in my opinion. It has great utility use, as in you can cook food. There's a lot of possibilities with it. It's just it's very dependent on what you're trying to run, and it's not very good by itself, is the issue. Moving on to Frostwall. Frostwall is a very interesting skill. I believe there's 1 charge, and it has 15 refresh. I think it's going to be the first skill in tier C, because it's just very mediocre. I would be throwing it in D, but there's some skill upgrades that actually make it quite good. So yeah, let's go take a peek at those, I guess. Taking a look at the Frostwall upgrades here. Upgrade 1 is quite good. Whenever an enemy is defeated by Frostwall, they explode, dealing damage, and freeze enemies behind them. So I'm going to throw this in B tier, because it's not overly strong. The Frostwall already is free synergy, and now you're making it more about the free synergy. So now, when you defeat an enemy with Frostwall, they explode, dealing damage, and freeze enemies behind them. However, it's not OP, and it's not terrible, right? It's just mid. So we're going to throw it there. Frostwall Upgrade 2. Increase Frostwall damage by 50% and freezes enemies that contact the wall. So this is actually quite good, right? So if you put up the wall, and then the wall's there, and an enemy walks into the wall, they will become frozen. So it's kind of good, right? You can more so control an area with this upgrade, and it deals 50% more damage, so why not, right? More damage, the better. So it's a pretty good upgrade. Upgrade 3. Your Frost Wall is an expanding ice ring, dealing damage and freeze. Maybe this is just A tier. This one and the tier 2 are on the equal playing field. I don't know which one's quite better, but being able to cast a skill and it just be a ring around you is kind of good. I'll definitely have to test this more, but I think they're on the same playing field in A tier. They're good, but not great. The great thing about Frostwall, and the only reason why I would personally take Frostwall, is because of the ultimate. Your Frostwall permanently freezes elite and champion enemies. By permanently freezes elite and champion enemies, that means you can attack, or once you hit them with this Frostwall, right, to freeze an elite or champion, you hit them once, and they perish instantly. Like any of the frost enemies or frozen enemies in A2, they all die instantly in one hit, right? That's the same thing here. You're basically turning elites and champions into one-hittable enemies, and that is absolutely insane. Very, very strong for high difficulty runs, especially in demons. Like, you could technically tech this in strictly for the champions themselves, but overall, once again, it is a very strong upgrade and definitely the best upgrade for Frostwall. So I would suggest just getting through, choosing whichever upgrades you want just to get to the ultimate. The ultimate is the thing you're looking for in this build. I'm sure of it. If not, well, then obviously I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure you just want the ultimate upgrade if you're running Frostwall. Another cool and weird skill here is Gravity Well. Gravity Well is similar to Cyclone in a way that it's, pulls in enemies and deals damage to them, but it's more so a one-time use thing. You shoot out a projectile that is a half circle kind of thing, right? And when it hits an enemy, it'll pull in enemies around it and then deal damage. And they take more damage the closer they are to the middle of the black hole, I believe, or the gravity well. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I also don't think it's very good at what it does, or what it's supposed to do, right? It's supposed to be a way to stun and group up enemies, and it does that, just not in the best way, right? Cyclone does that way better, and it has a lower refresh, I'm pretty sure. So Gravity Well has 1 charge for sure and 15 refresh. It's not great, right? It has a high refresh, 1 skill charge, and Cyclone does it better. Let's just take a look at their skill upgrades. Gravity Well's skill upgrades are pretty strong. Once again, this is very mid-looking skill upgrades here. So Gravity Well upgrade 1. Conjure a beam to pierce and pull enemies towards a black hole. I've used this once, and from what I can see, it's not amazing. It definitely doesn't feel great to use, but then again, for what it is, it works well. It does conjure a beam, and it does pierce enemies, and it does pull them towards a black hole. It does all that. It does what it says it's going to do, and it does that pretty well. So I'm going to have to throw it in B tier. Gravity Well Upgrade 2 is probably the best one, so far at least. Enemies hit by Gravity Well are frozen and no longer stunned. As you guys all know, freeze is the strongest element in the game. So if a skill is allowing you to freeze an enemy, you know that skill upgrade is going to be crazy. Now, obviously, some skills work better than others with elements. This one, for example, I don't really know how well it works with it, but I've tested this upgrade once, and it seems pretty good. So I know I threw it in S tier originally, but it's going to go to A tier. Gravity Well Upgrade 3 is a very interesting one. Gravity Well ends with an explosion of chain lightning that seeks other enemies. I've used this once. I don't have enough information to determine whether it's good or bad, but I'm sure it's A tier. Actually, maybe it's just top of B tier, right? Maybe it's just here just for the simple fact that if you're running a chain lightning build or a lightning build, for example, it's going to be strong, right? You're going to have a lot more extra damage here, and it's going to be very viable in that build. But if you're not running a lightning build, its viability kind of goes down and isn't necessarily that good, because obviously the damage fall off of chain lightning isn't going to be great in like A4, A5. I think it's a solid B tier. And the ultimate sounds great, right? Gravity Well destroys enemy projectiles. That sounds pretty strong, right? But I'm just going to throw it in A tier because it's not cracked out by any means. I haven't seen it, pop off. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about Gravity Well. Gravity Well is a very mid skill. I wouldn't take it if I don't have to. It's kind of a last choice in a way, because Cyclone, does what it does, but better. I don't know. I haven't seen any builds built around Gravity Well. I haven't used it all that much either. I haven't seen anybody else use it that much, so I think where it lies is okay. All right, we're getting into some of the good skills here, or at least a couple are coming up. So starting with Hailstone Armor, right? Hailstone Armor is quite good. I've been looking at it for a little bit now, and I'm not sure whether to put it in front of Blast Bomb or behind Blast Bomb, because it's also technically better than Arlan's Lucky Dice. I think we're actually going to put it here. It is very good at what it does, which is it freezes enemies, and it protects you, right? It says Hailstone Armor, and it definitely is like armor. If enemies get too close, they get hit by a snowball, and then they get frozen, right? And then they can't attack you. It's very strong in that regard. It has 1 charge, and its refresh is 15. However, I think it is one of the best skills in the game. And the skill upgrades are pretty strong overall. Looking at the Hailstone Armor upgrades here, the first one is thrown snowballs create an ice spike, dealing AoE damage around the target, which is not bad. I'm going to throw it at probably A or B tier. I haven't quite decided, so I'm just going to throw it in A tier to start, I guess. Thrown snowballs create an ice spike, dealing AoE damage around the target. Yeah, see, since you're already in the freeze category, because Hailstone Armor is a freeze skill, having an upgrade that is built around freeze as well is quite nice, right? You're already building in that direction, and then you hit this upgrade, and it puts you more into that direction, which is very strong and keeps a lot of synergy between the skills, right? Skills and the relics that you're probably picking up. Upgrade 2. Gain a passive aura that slows enemies around you. Unless you are a new player, I think this is useless. I'm going to be 100% real with everybody here. I do not like anything that slows down enemies. The faster enemies get to me, the faster I can kill them. That makes logical sense, and I'm using that logic here as well, which is why I'm throwing it into D tier, because it's just not good. It's a passive aura that slows enemies around you. Why would you want them to get slowed? You're just trying to kill them faster anyways, right? I think it's a very useless skill upgrade, for sure. I would rather take literally any of the generic upgrades instead of it. Hailstone Armor Upgrade 3. I instantly put it to S tier. Whenever you cast a perfect Hailstone Armor, you become invulnerable for 4 seconds, or until you attack, with a cooldown of 5 seconds. It gives you 4 seconds of invulnerability when you perfectly cast Hailstone Armor. You cannot attack, and you cannot cast another skill. And the reason why it's still an S tier is because it's still 4 seconds of invulnerability. Regardless of how you split it up, it is 4 seconds of invulnerability. Those 4 seconds of invulnerability can allow you to reposition. There's so many ways to utilize this, and maybe I'm overstating how good it is, so maybe I'll move it down to A tier. It's definitely better than Hailstone Armor Upgrade 1, right? We can agree on that, I bet. But I think Hailstone Upgrade 3 has so much potential. It's just people aren't looking at it as much as they used to, because it used to be stupid strong, and I'm not going to explain why it was really strong because, well, I don't need to remind you guys if you did play during that time, and if you didn't play during that time, it's better if you don't know, because you're going to be slightly upset that it's not that way. Alright, so the ultimate upgrade is whenever you cast a perfect Hailstone Armor, you gain armor, also releases Frost Nova that freezes. There's 2 things here. Whenever you cast a perfect Hailstone Armor, you gain armor. You gain 5 armor every time you perfectly cast Hailstone Armor, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then you also release a Frost Nova that freezes. So if you're running any sort of freeze build, easy. This is easy for you. However, I'm not 100% sure whether if you don't have any armor relics and you pick this upgrade, or when you get the ultimate upgrade, whether it just gives you a default 15 max armor or not. I don't know about that. That is something I would have to test. But that 5 armor every single time you perfect Hailstone Armor is ridiculous. But it seems really strong, therefore I'm going to throw it in S tier, because it's definitely stronger than Hailstone Armor Upgrade 3 and 1, and 2 doesn't even exist really. So I'm throwing it in S tier. It's strong. This is definitely something you want to get with Hailstone Armor. Not necessarily as fast as possible, but definitely quite fast. Moving on to Judgment. Judgment is such a unique skill because there's only like one other skill that can apply lightning, and it's not that great, right? Actually, there's a couple, but they're not great at applying lightning. This is the one high damage lightning skill. I think it's slightly worse than Blast Bomb, but then again, it could be slightly better than Blast Bomb just because it does have a status element built into it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it in front of Blast Bomb. Blast Bomb's great, but we're talking about Judgment here. Judgment scales with lightning damage and skill damage. It has 1 charge and 12 refresh, so it's on the lower side of refresh and 1 charge, so it's pretty much even with everything else. The Judgment skill upgrades are pretty mediocre, I'm going to be honest. There's only one upgrade that I truly think is good, which is upgrade 1. Summons an additional set of lightning bolts. Now, they did nerf this. The lightning bolts that are summoned in addition deal 50% of the first one's damage, which is not bad, right? It's still an additional 50% damage on top of what you'd normally be doing. So it's definitely S tier. It is really strong, even with the nerf. Yeah, I'm gonna throw in S tier. It's just good, right? The second upgrade is enemies in the cast radius are rooted. Once again, I don't know why I would want to root an enemy. I don't know how valuable rooting an enemy is yet. I haven't used anything that roots enemies. I don't think rooting enemies is good, so I'm going to throw in a C tier. The only reason why it's not in D tier is because I honestly don't know. So I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt and putting it in C tier, right? I don't think rooting enemies is better than just increasing the damage of the skill or even making it crit or allowing it to crit with higher crit chance. Yeah, C tier it goes, I guess. Judgment upgrade 3. When you cast a perfect judgment, your next 6 weapon attacks have lightning. If you're going a lightning build and you're running judgment, you might as well pick this up, right? You're scaling lightning damage, and now you can just perfect judgment and get more lightning on your next weapon attacks. It's quite strong, right? So that's why it's an A tier. It's strong, but not like Judgment Upgrade 1, right? It's still weaker than that, so it's going to be an A tier. And the ultimates, I don't like anything that is AoE or like an aura effect. They don't work as well as something that I can actually control. I don't really care about how much damage it does either, because it's still negligible. Like, it doesn't matter how much damage it does, because I'm not trying to get into the face of enemies. I don't play a lot of melee classes, and if I did, sure, maybe I would, care about that, but I like my ranged attacks and ranged weapons, so I'm not a big fan of this. You could argue that, sure, but, it's still static aura, it deals AoE damage, it's good for clearing enemies when you're a melee class. I don't think it's that great even then. I still think it's just like, meh, whatever. It's an ultimate upgrade. It's free. You're getting it because you got your second upgrade anyways. Like, okay, whatever. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave Judgment Upgrade 1 in S tier, Upgrade 3 in A tier, and then Upgrade 2 and the Ultimate in C tier. Once again, I do not think they're that good at all. Knight's Charge is a very interesting one. It's been buffed, it's been nerfed, it's been thrown around constantly, but every single time it somehow sneaks back to the top. Every time. It is probably better than Dice. Knight's Charge is an interesting one. It has 12 refresh and has 1 skill charge. However, if you perfect Knight's Charge, you get 5 refresh back. Automatically. That's just built into the skill. Realistically, if you always perfect it, the refresh is only 7, which is quite low. In other words, I think that Knight's Charge is pretty strong. Obviously, you can see I threw it in A tier, and like only the third one down, so it's a top 5 skill so far. And that's quite crazy. Knight's Charge also has some really good upgrades here. Like upgrade 1, whenever you cast a perfect Knight's Charge, a meteor is summoned at target location that deals damage and burn. This is actually quite insane. The damage of the meteor is quite high. It's higher than I expected. And since it also burns, that puts you into, burn builds. It allows you to go in that direction. A lot of different options here. And it's great. It's actually amazing. It's one of the upgrades that I definitely would be hunting for if I'm taking Knight's Charge. Knight's Charge upgrade 2 is one that has plagued me for a bit because I don't really know where to throw it. I like it a lot, but then at the same time, it puts you into the burn build. So if you're not going a burn build, right, then you don't want to be in the burn synergy or the weight or like anything to do with burn, because you don't want any of the burn relics to show up if you're not going a burn build. But it's great if you're going a burn build, not good if you're not going a burn build. Although you could argue just being able to burn, is utility in itself, because you can cook food and stuff like that. I really don't know. I think it's a very mid-tier skill upgrade. It's okay. It does what it does, and it's good at it, but if you don't utilize it well, it's bad. Alright, Knight's Charge Upgrade 3, I quickly put into C tier. Knight's Charge Upgrade 3. Your Knight's Charge is a decoy projectile that stuns enemies. In other words, or in layman's terms, you send out a decoy that will stun the enemies. Therefore, you do not move, so you cannot use it as a movement technique. Personally, one of my favorite things about Knight's Charge is the fact that it moves you. It is good movement, and it moves you well, right? It moves you fast, it does damage, it stuns the enemy that you hit. It no longer is a movement tech. It becomes just a skill, right? And once again, for me personally, I like to use it as a movement skill. So this doesn't really help me in any way. This actually actively hinders why I take Night Charge. Therefore, it's going in C tier, right? It could be worse, but it's not. It's just where it is, right? The ultimate upgrades after a nerf is probably a whenever 3 or more unique enemies are hit by a perfect Night Charge, it refreshes. So what it means by unique is you have to hit 3 new enemies for it to refresh. If you hit the same 3 enemies every single time, you will not get a refresh every single time. You have to hit 3 new enemies that you haven't hit before with Night Charge. And since you have to perfect Night Charge anyways, it's not great because you're already going to be getting that 5 refresh back. So what more could you really utilize? Like being able to refresh it, sure, that's good. You can use it again very fast, but you're already getting some refresh back by perfecting it with just the built-in kits of the skill. So is it really that good? I say yes. Yes, it is. Being able to refresh a full skill charge just by hitting 3 enemies, that's great. But it could definitely be better, and that's why it's in A tier, right? It's good, not amazing. Moving on to Phantom Spear. Phantom Spear is a weird one, man. It is a really weird one. I personally hate it, and that's saying something because the skill's very strong. It does a lot of damage for the most part, and it applies a lot of poison stacks, right? And it has a lot of pierce. Like, there's a lot of things going for it. Granted, it is 1 skill charge, and it has 15. Like, it's quite good. I just personally don't like it, and I don't think a lot of people use it. Therefore, I'm going to throw it down to C tier because it's just, not a very useful skill, I guess, right? Not a lot of people use it because, well, poison ain't that strong anymore. Anyways, let's get on to the skill upgrades for it. Phantom Spear's skill upgrades are very mediocre, and I don't know if they're good or bad, I'm gonna be honest. Let's just get into it. So upgrade 1. Deals bonus damage for each poisoned enemy. Like, does this matter? How often are you going to have a whole bunch of enemies poisoned while you use Phantom Spear? Aren't you going to be using Phantom Spear to poison enemies for the most part? Like, is that not the play? I don't know. I'm going to throw it in B tier because I don't see a big use case for it, I guess. But then again, it's not bad. Like, there's not a hindrance to it. It's just not super useful, I guess. So I'm going to throw it in B tier. Upgrade 2, your Phantom Spear explodes, dealing AoE damage. Yeah, I took this once. It actively kills the build because the first enemy you hit, it just deals AoE damage basically in front of that, not like around that enemy. So you kind of miss out on the entire piercing factor of Phantom Spear. So it's not good. It's really not good. I think it actively hinders Phantom Spear. Therefore, I'm throwing it in D tier. And once again, this is my opinion. If you don't like it or you have a differing opinion, just let me know in the comments. Like, I'm always open to ideas here. Anyways, moving on to upgrade 3. Enemies hit by Phantom Spear are dealt max poison stacks. This makes it really good, I feel like, because max poison stacks could be 5 stacks by default or like 8 stacks not by default, like with Impure Pestilence, one of the skills that increases max poison stacks, right? It's good. I would say upgrade 3 is good. Maybe not quite S tier, so I'm going to move it down to A tier, but it's good, for sure. Now, on the ultimate upgrade, enemies hit by Phantom Spear are haunted and spawn a ghost when defeated by Phantom Spear. What more can I say, really? I don't think I really have to explain this one much. It's like, haunting enemies is not great overall, unless you're using a melee build. And even then, I don't think the haunted effect is as good as you may think. I don't know. Personally, it feels very underwhelming. So I'm going to leave it at that pretty much. Upgrade 3 is the best one here. That's all I can say. Just if I'm running Phantom Spear, I'd be searching for upgrade 3 and pretty much none of the other ones. I'd rather just have generic skill upgrades. Another unique skill coming up, which is Rupture. Rupture is a weird one again. I think it's at the back end of B tier because it's like, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting, I feel like. And I'm not 100% sure on how many people use it, but it's very cool. I feel like the skill upgrades really carry it here. And it does have good damage as well. There's 1 skill charge and 15 refresh, so once again, higher refresh side, and 1 charge. I think the skill upgrades make it better. Rupture upgrade 1. The ground is ruptured, dealing damage over time. I can't really say if this is good or not, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I've actually tried this upgrade out. So we're just gonna leave it in B tier for now until I get more information on it, I guess. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of it. I feel like it's probably mid. I don't know, damage over time, that's okay usually. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. Upgrade 2. Whenever you cast a perfect rupture, the outer ring is cast an additional time. That's instantly into A tier because you're dealing another amount of damage, and that's good. Being able to deal more damage is massive, so definitely A tier. Upgrade 3 is very interesting. I like this one. You gain 1 max HP for each enemy defeated by Rupture. Enemies have a chance to turn into a potato. Ask me what a potato does? Nothing. It does nothing. It actually does nothing. Unless they change something, it does nothing. It does nothing. That's all I'm saying. There's no interaction with it. Like you can't smack it. You can't do anything. But then again, gaining 1 max HP for each enemy defeated is quite cool. That is a very cool upgrade. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can eat the potato though for like 2 health regen or something. Like, it's not significant by any means, but it's a cool feature, and that's why it's an A tier. It's a very unique upgrade, and I love it for that. The ultimate upgrade here though, enemies below 25% HP are instantly defeated by Rupture. That is very strong. Now, I can assure you that this like execution does not work on bosses. So that's something, I guess. I like the way this tier list looks here. So ultimate upgrade in S tier, Rupture upgrade 2 and Rupture upgrade 3 in A tier, and then Rupture upgrade 1 in B tier. I think that is very, very good, and I don't think I have to change anything there. It looks good. We're down to the last 4 skills here. The next one is Seek and Destroy. It was updated in the last major update, let's call it, so version 1.5, I believe. It could have been 1.4 even. Yeah, they reworked it. And I don't know whether I liked the old version of it or the new version of it. Obviously, the old version was Eruption, the new version is Seek and Destroy. So they are different skills. They just use the same icon here. I don't quite know where to put it. I think it's better than Phantom Spear and Ice Wall or Frost Wall, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't used it enough to really know. Let's just take a peek at the skill upgrades and see which ones I've used and, what I think about them. So, Seek and Destroy's skill upgrades seem alright. They don't seem amazing. Seek and Destroy upgrade 1 is your drill stays in place and deals AoE damage. I'm going to throw it in B tier instantly because this literally just makes it what the old skill was, which is Eruption, where you just place a drill, it deals damage in an AoE in that place and doesn't move, right? So, not terrible. Seek and Destroy upgrade 2. Whenever an enemy is defeated with your drill, each knight is healed 10 HP. That's a lot of health regen, but then again, it's gotta kill enemies, right? It's gotta kill the enemies. And the only way Seek and Destroy is going to kill enemies is if either the enemy is already low or you're scaling skill damage, right? And I don't think this is a great skill to scale skill damage on because I'm pretty sure it has 1 charge and has 15 refresh. Which, once again, that's a pretty high refresh. It's interesting, okay? It is very interesting. We're just going to throw both of them in B tier because, sure, it's healing, but I don't value healing all that much, usually, so B tier. Upgrade 3. Enemies hit by your drill are rooted. Yep, that is. Honestly, normally I'd probably throw something that's rooted in D tier, but I think it's just C tier because it can hit a lot of enemies. It can hit quite a few enemies because it drills through the ground towards the direction that you are sending it, and then it'll pop up at the end, right? But as it's going underground, drilling to that location that you've set it to, it can hit enemies, and it can knock them up. It can possibly root them with this upgrade. I haven't fully tested that, but it seems like it's a possibility of actually being good. Granted, to me, rooting doesn't do anything, but it's a possibility. Only ultimate upgrade is insane. Your drill will seek indefinitely until it fails to defeat a target. So if you send out Seek and Destroy, and it kills or defeats its first target, it will target another target, and if it kills that target, then it'll find a new target and seek them out, and if it kills that one, then it'll continue on and, keeps going. It keeps going, keeps going, keeps going until it can't defeat a target, which is really cracked out. Obviously, this upgrade works better if you're going a skill build with skill damage scaling so that it can pretty much just carry on and defeat an entire room. I have a video up that is literally doing that, where I just scale skill damage and then basically kill everything in that room, not instantaneously, but by one skill cast. And it's a very entertaining build for sure. You don't have to do too much either once it gets going, which is very cool. You can just kind of sit back and relax and watch it do its work. It's very cool. You guys should definitely try it. I have a very weird relationship with Soul Siphon. Soul Siphon is such a cool and unique skill, and I love it and hate it at the same time. I don't know where to put it because the skill upgrades are amazing. It no longer has a massive downside of animation locking you, but it's also like an awkward skill in some way. It just is. If you've ever used it, you might have noticed that it's a straight beam, right? The beam has a lot of range as well, but it's very difficult to line up enemies to kill multiple enemies at once, and that's kind of that awkwardness that I'm talking about. You can't utilize it to its best ability because it doesn't just seek out enemies. It doesn't just, deal a bunch of damage AoE. It's a big line that does a lot of damage in that line, but you have to line up enemies, and that's the difficulty of it, for sure. The skill upgrades for Soul Siphon, though, are quite crazy. So starting with upgrade 1, whenever an enemy is defeated by Soul Siphon, it refreshes by 1 hit. When you kill an enemy with Soul Siphon, you refresh it by 1 hit, and it has 1 charge and 12 refresh. So if you kill 12 enemies with 1 skill charge, boom, you got an entire skill charge back with this upgrade. Obviously, it's not S tier, it's just A tier, but it's still a good way to refresh, or at least a substitute to being able to refresh better. And if you're running a skill build, the refresh helps a lot, so I'm going to throw it in A tier for sure. Soul Siphon Upgrade 2. Conjure 3 beams. So this one isn't like the other ones where when you have 3 of the things, right, it does less damage like that. It's actually different. The main beam does 100% damage of like normal damage Soul Siphon. Then the one that goes to the left and to the right deals 50% less damage. However, if you hit all 3 beams on one enemy, you just 2x your damage, right? So it's quite strong still. That's why I'm throwing it to the front of A tier and not quite S tier, because it's still strong, but not, insane. Soul Siphon upgrades 3. Enemies defeated by Soul Siphon leave a damage AoE where they were defeated. It's going B tier. It's okay. I've used it. I'd argue that it's better than some skill upgrades, but not the best. I still think I would take some of the general or generic skill upgrades over this one. Therefore, it's in B tier. It's not like... Actually, no, I'm going to move it down. I'm going to move it down to C tier. It's actually not that great. I personally don't like it at all. Once again, it's just like an awkward skill upgrade, because when you defeat an enemy, there's most likely not going to be another enemy on top of that enemy, especially with Soul Siphon, where you're probably just going to kill both of those enemies that are next to each other, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to leave a damage AoE where said enemy was defeated. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to throw in C tier, and then I'd probably just not really care for it. I'd probably just roll over it if I had the option to. The ultimate upgrade, however, is very strong. Whenever Soul Siphon refreshes, permanently increase skill damage by 1%. It basically has a built-in alternate Supreme Ambition, and that's very cool. I've yet to pull off a build where I refresh a lot and gain a ton of skill damage from the ultimate upgrade, but I definitely want to try that out at some point. And honestly, if it does work as good as I think it does, then it's a really, really good ultimate upgrade. And this is like the one thing I'm looking for, right? If I'm going a Soul Siphon build, I'm going to be looking for the tier 2 upgrade, the tier 1 upgrade, and the ultimate, right? Also, I swapped these by accident. The tier 2 upgrade is definitely better than tier 1 upgrade. I don't know if I said that earlier, but I definitely agree with that for sure. So yeah, I'd be looking for the tier 2 and then the ultimate upgrade. The tier 1 upgrade, sure, if I find it, that's great, but I'm not gonna actively go out of my way to have it to get the ultimate. I don't really care that much. Anyways, yeah, Soul Siphon is a strong skill. I like their skill upgrades more so. The skill itself, though. It's interesting, right? Like I said earlier, it's hard to hit multiple enemies because it's hard to line up multiple enemies. Granted, just don't use it if you can't, right? Because you're wasting a skill charge, I guess. I don't know. What I do know, though, is I like where I put these skill upgrades. They make sense and are quite strong. Warrior Wisps. I dislike the fact that they're summoned, like, a lot, and I don't really know where I want to put them. Because I personally would use them over Rupture and Seek and Destroy for the most part, but I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't, though. I definitely did over Seek and Destroy. Actually, yeah, okay. I'm going to throw it behind Gravity Well, because as much as I don't really love Warrior Wisps are very strong, and I know a lot of people use them because it takes aggro away from you, the player, right? And it's also another way to get elements or status ailments because each wisp you summon will be aligned with some sort of element. So you either summon a poison wisp, a freeze wisp, a fire wisp, or a lightning wisp, right? Like those are the 4 different elements that are in the game. And it gives you an out, right? It gives you an out to have multiple status ailments against enemies. And the upgrades on it really aren't that great, in my opinion, so let's go check them out. Skill upgrade 1 for Warrior Wisps is increase max Wisps by 1. Wisps no longer have a lifetime. That is the best upgrade, I think, as far as I can tell. I would argue that maybe the generic damage up increase skill upgrade is also very strong for Wisps, but I 100% agree that upgrade 1 for Warrior Wisps is very, very strong, and is definitely an S tier skill upgrade. Warrior Wisps upgrade 2. You gain 2 weapon damage for each wisp you have. It's okay, right? If you're at your max Warrior Wisps, which is 5, or max Wisps in general, which is 5, that's 10 additional weapon damage. It's nothing insane by any means, but it is an increase, right? It's alright. I'm going to throw it in B tier because it's mid. Warrior Wisps upgrade 3. Whenever a Wisp is defeated, each knight is healed for 10 health. Once again, I don't love these health regenning upgrades that much, like, at all. I just don't utilize healing as much as I may have used to. And I know if you're a newer player, healing is kind of a crutch in a way, and that's okay. All the power to you guys. Whatever makes you win your runs, right? And whatever keeps you playing this game, because this game is super fun, and I love it. But personally, I don't enjoy healing upgrades because I'd rather deal more damage, right? The faster I kill them, the less chance they have at dealing damage to me, right? That's my mentality, at least. So that's why it's going B tier, next to upgrade 2, but slightly behind it. The ultimate upgrade just increases damage, speed, and HP for all wisps. Honestly, like, you can't go wrong with it. Like, it's just good, right? It's just generally good. Why would you not want your wisps to have higher damage, more move speed, and higher HP values? Like, why would you not want that? I would definitely be looking for the ultimate upgrade and the tier 1 upgrade. Not so much the other two. Once again, like I said earlier, the generic damage upgrade is quite strong. So I would advise trying to take that one as well. And since these wisps that you summon scale with skill damage, or at least their damage scales with skill damage, you can make them deal a lot, and I mean a lot of damage. I have a video where I did a build with them that I will have up in a card here, and it is ridiculous. Anyways, if you guys want to see that video, it should be tagged in the top right as a card. Just click on that, watch that. Amazing. Honestly, you guys would enjoy that build. That build was so much fun. I'm loving it, just like thinking about it. Anyways, back to the tier list. Yeah, I think upgrade 1 and the ultimates is S tier. Upgrade 2 and 3 is just B tier. You know, they're good, but not amazing. I would take some other skill upgrades over them any day. All right, on to the new skill that some people have not even played with. And the reason why I say that is because Switch players don't have access to this yet. And when they get access to it, they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it. I cannot stress this enough. Yalee Barrage is one of the most fun skill upgrades, or skills, sorry, that I've played with in a long time. It's extremely fresh to know that there's new skills that can actually compete with top tier skill. Once again, I'm throwing it in like this top tier, but I'm not 100% sure on where it actually lies between the top upgrades or the top skills, sorry, because I've used it quite a bit, but not enough to fully understand its capabilities. And it's also kind of weak on its own. You need the ultimate upgrade to make it strong. So let's go take a look at the upgrades and then I'll break it down. As I was saying, you need the upgrades to make Yalee Barrage actually strong. And one of the best skill upgrades that I've actually seen, and I hope they change some of the other skills upgrades to be similar to this, because Yalee Barrage Upgrade 1. Select an element type, your Yalees always deal damage of the selected type. So if you select freeze, your Yalees will always freeze their target, right? It is really cool, and it's great. If you're doing a burn build, boom, make them burn enemies, right? You're doing a lightning build, make them deal lightning damage. You're doing a freeze build, make them do freeze damage. If you're doing a poison build, make them poison enemies, right? Like, it's such a strong skill upgrade. And you know all the other skills that I was talking about where it's like it imbues this skill with elements? Yeah, this is 10 times better than those skill upgrades. 10 times better because you get to select the exact type you want, which means you don't have to, make a build around all types. You just have to make a build around one type and then you're set, right? It is an amazing upgrade. I really hope they change the way the other upgrades work for the other skills. Upgrade 2. It's another insane upgrade. It might be A tier though, not S tier, for the simple fact that what it does is it summons an additional Yalee. So whenever you use Yalee Barrage, you summon one Yalee. By default, that's just the skill itself, right? And that Yalee shoots out 2 orbs that deal, I don't even know how much damage. It's 2 orbs, right? So if you take the tier 2 upgrade here, and you summon an additional Yalee, then you're effectively doubling your damage, right? Which is great. Don't get me wrong, that sounds amazing, and it is quite amazing. It's just the issue arises when you get the ultimate upgrade. When you summon multiple Yalees to perform an ultimate barrage, it only summons an additional one, right? Actually, I'll talk about that later. It's an A tier upgrade. Upgrade 2 is an A tier upgrade. Alright, upgrade 3. Your Yalees stay with the knight. I originally liked this idea, but then I started to not like it. So basically what Yalees do is you summon them, they attack, they dissipate. That's the entire skill, right? But if you take Yalee Barrage Upgrade 3, your Yalees stay with the knight. So they'll do their initial burst, and then they'll stick around for another 2 bursts, for a total of 3 attacks each, and then they'll disappear after that. So it's pretty good, because you get more damage out of them, but you can only have one skill charge amount of Yalees at any one time hovering around you. Alright, now onto the ultimate upgrade. Summons multiples Yalees to perform an ultimate barrage. It summons 4 Yalees by default. It summons 4. As I was talking about the upgrade 2 where it summons an additional, it only makes it 5, right? That's why I don't think upgrade 2 is like S tier. If it made each summon, all 4 of the summons, summon an additional, then that would be 8, and that would be insane, right? That would be insanity, but it doesn't do that. So that's why I think upgrade 2 is A tier, and the ultimate upgrade is absolutely S tier. Like, honestly, it is the best ultimate upgrade in the entire game. It makes this skill that is, like, so mid into an absolute demon. And that's also why I think I might have to move Yalee Barrage and where it sits on the tier list. I'm gonna be honest. All of these upgrades make Yalee Barrage actually good. So by default, Yalee Barrage is very weak, and I mean extremely weak. Like, you'll be like, why is this even a skill weak? But then you get the upgrades and you're like, oh, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, let's go back to the tier list here. After looking at the skill upgrades, right, I'm going to move Yalee Barrage down to the top of A tier. Because it's really good when you hit and you get all the skill upgrades. It's really strong. But if you don't, it's not good at all. It's not good at all. Yeah, this might be kind of controversial to people that have played with Yalee Barrage. I'm going to be honest. I'm like split. I feel like it should be dead center. Like, it should be sitting right there. Like, it's so good, but it's so bad. Because it's better than these, or it's, like, on par with most of these, but it's still slightly better than these when it hits. And, yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine here. So, overall, once again, this is my skills tier list, and all of the skill upgrades ranks for each skill. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I got anything wrong, any of the information I did was wrong. Hopefully nothing's too wrong, and if it is wrong, hopefully I've corrected it. That'll be it for now. I'm going to be trying to make some other tier lists as well, so if you do enjoy this content and you want to see the other tier lists, like the weapons tier list, the relics tier list, actually, yeah, I think that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to do another relic tier list, or a relic tier list, and a weapons tier list. And with the weapons tier list, I'm going to break down all of the weapon upgrades or modifications and break them down too. So yeah, make sure you stick around for those. I'm not quite sure when those will be done, but I'm going to try to get them done before 2.0 releases, because I want to get all of this stuff done and published so you guys can see it, learn from it, get better at the game before the massive 2.0 DLC and 2.0 update releases. Once again, thank you guys for watching. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. And then the other thing, I probably say it a lot, actually. I know I say it a lot, but if you did enjoy this video, and if it did help you, just please leave a like on it. It helps me out so, so much, and it doesn't take that much effort to just, click that like button. Thank you guys, and let me know your favorite skills in the comment section, and let me know if you think I put any skills in the wrong spots as well. Once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.